Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. On the program today, we have our eye on the economy. Well, I'll be speaking to two investment research analysts, one from Kari Asset Management Limited and another from Afrinvest. From Kari Asset Management Limited, I'm being joined on the program by Mr. Edgar Ibinum, and from Afrinvest, I'm being joined on the program by Mr. Ayodeji Ebo. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having us.
So, Ms. Ebo, I'll start with you. Let's talk about, this issue we've been saying it for the last couple of weeks, especially since we started seeing pressure on the domestic and international economic front about really talking about diversifying the economy. So let's list some of those drivers of the economy.
Okay, yeah, it's critical to look at the drivers that would enable the increased output regarding the non-sector revenue. Firstly, I'd like to highlight the power sector, which we feel a lot has been done. There's been a lot of milestone on the backdrop on the back of the privatization of most of the value chains. That's the generation, the distribution part of the power sector. However, when you look at in terms of the output, it's still lagging behind. In terms of the output, has not increased significantly as expected. And when you look at what will be the implication on the non-oil sector, in terms of the cost in which power, most of the manufacturing industries, the firm SMEs, needs to generate alternative power to support their businesses, which means that it increases their overhead. So if that would also trickle down to the profitability of the firm. Also, when you also look at in terms of infrastructure, this still lagging behind. The government has been able to put a lot of there have been a lot of efforts, but as a result of the deficit in the past years, this has not really trickled down in helping to ease doing business in Nigeria and trying to increase the output within the non-oil sector. Another major driver that we need to also take care of is human capital. When you look at the skill gap in the Nigerian economy, it's still the gap is significantly wide, such that even if the non-oil sector kicks up, there may be no required skills within the economy, such that could help drive the particular sector. They may need to bring in expatriates, which will not be good for the economy. So setting up like a trade school, the technical schools, they need to up the game such that they are able to help increase the skills that is acquired as they pass through. And lastly, I would just like to touch legislation that will help to institutionalize some of these policies, so that because of the inconsistency in policies or political instability, if there's legislation backing for some of these policies, it helps institutionalize it, so that if there's any other government that is coming in, it won't necessarily lead to any change in policies, and there will be consistency, which will help drive output in the non-oil sectors.
Okay. Now, Mr. Ibinu, let me come to you on this one. He talked a lot about power, and we know that post-privatization, the federal government has tried to do a lot in terms of giving intervention funds to some of these generating and distribution companies to help them, find their feet. But how much can these companies achieve in the short to medium term? Because, we're looking at jump-starting key sectors of the economy, and every sector of the economy relies on power.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely, no major magic will be performed in the short term by these private sector operators in the power sector. To start with, I also want to say that we should remember that most of the people that bought these firms are also indigenous firms. The expertise, for now we cannot confirm, to the extent that they'll be able to carry these, the functions of these power sectors. And apart from that, it takes a little while. If you're looking at between now and December, I don't see much happening in the power sector, even beyond. All because the money they've raised, we are still having a whole lot of, debts, issues and all that, and the infrastructures are actually below standard. For them to move forward, they need more funds outside what they have already invested. So in the short term, I don't see much happening. But then I think the area that we need to emphasize, just like it said, it has to do with the legal institutions. Because really, economic development thrives more when you have private sector participation. And I tell you, this is one major thing that they look at. The ability for the legal system in an economy to protect their investment, not a situation whereby they will invest a whole lot of money and tomorrow there is a reversal in policy and they begin to count their losses. So I think that is a critical factor that we need to look at.
But now looking at that very critical factor and looking at where the economy is at the moment, if you listen to me at the beginning of the program, it's not a peculiar situation to Nigeria alone. But at this time, with the kind of population that we have and the kind of situation that we have, insecurity, a shift in the election dates, which has made a lot of investors jittery, how can we begin to look at these sectors, the critical drivers, to ensure that they kickstart the other important sectors of the economy? Well, of course, we'll get to those other sectors, but how do we begin?
Now, first of all, I want to say that kickstarting the different sectors is essential. But then, you see, Nigeria's scenario is such that you have a whole lot of leakages in the system. Yeah. So I will advise that the first thing that should be done is to see how we can block these leakages. This morning, read in the news that over 208 billion or thereabout was recovered. That has been a leakage in the system. So no matter the amount that that will be generated from these sectors, if these leakages persist, definitely it's not going to make any impact. Leakages in terms of even tax evasion. Maybe we've had stories, we've read in the media several times that there are some foreign companies in Nigeria, who will not want to pay tax. There are times that they will tell you, okay, so amount is the tax you're supposed to pay, but one way or the other you could pay, something lower, and one way you get away with it. So Nigeria needs to fight with leakages. We also heard in the news that, okay, currently about 60,000 barrels per day is what we are recording in terms of leakages, in the oil and gas sector. This is money. So if we can block these channels, that, these funds that we already have in the system, is going into, definitely are going to save a whole lot of money from that. Because we're looking at the immediate. Generating income from, manufacturing sector, for instance, depends a whole lot on power sector, though it is a common denominator.
But this is something that we've been talking about for a very long time. It's not something that is new.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You see, like power sector, I see it, as a common denominator to every manufacturer in Nigeria. You are not you don't have any special advantage over me because we are facing the same, cost in terms of power generation. So it doesn't stop people from manufacturing. You do your business, I do my business at the same cost. It's a common factor. So what I'm trying to say is, if we can develop this sector, and I'm talking about the manufacturing, after blocking the leakages, we now create more infrastructure in terms of road networks and all that, because definitely money is going to be saved from all these leakages. When this money, now again, we also have to look at the fact that currently our import, petrol, that is motor spirit, ranks #1 in terms of import. In the last quarter, the third quarter of 2014, over about 227 billion thereabout was imported. That's the what? Followed by wheat, which is about 64 billion. So by the time we're talking about agriculture now, shifting from manufacturing, agriculture is another driver.
We'll get to agriculture, but let's take the sectors one at a time.